Hey friends, it's Laura. I just thought I would share another tutorial with you on how to finish some of your cross stitch pieces. So that's something that, everyone does a little differently. I've watched several different videos and I've kind of combined some of my the likes, and I've kind of taken out some of the dislikes, and so I thought I would just show you how I finish my cross stitch. And these are for like the boards that you're going to switch them out. Sorry, the boards you're going to switch out a lot using magnets and washers. So I know that I show these each month, and this is a design by Melissa at pinkerandpumpkinblogspot.com. This was the one I finished for April, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to do May in the tutorial today. Okay, so first up, you're gonna need to gather some supplies, and I'm gonna put a list here, but here's a brief rundown. I like to press my finished cross stitch pieces first, so you would probably want an iron or a steamer if you prefer that. As long as you're using color fast thread. If you're using some hand-dyed threads, they're probably not gonna be color fast, so don't use steam with those. No water, so no spray either, no spray starch, anything like that. Just a nice hot iron. So you're going to need your finished cross stitch piece. I use 2 pieces of sticky board, so you're going to want that. You're going to want some cute fabric, and you're going to want some washers. So that's all the supplies. Gather those up, and I'll meet you at the ironing board. Okay, so here we are at the ironing board, and I will tell you what we're doing. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finished cross stitch piece, and I'm going to put it face down. Now I'm using a wool pressing mat here, just to kind of give my thread a little cushion for when I'm pressing it, so it doesn't smush all that thread into just a flat blob. So I am just using a hot iron and just ironing my piece. That's really all I'm doing here. Make sure I get all of those little creases and things out from the hoop and other things that I'm doing. So there's my finished piece. It's ready. But then I also want to do my background fabric. Now this fabric, my stepdaughter actually dyed when she was in high school art class. They were doing some cool techniques, and she had some fabric left over and was like, hey, do you want this? And first I was going to use it in a quilt, but it's not color fast, really. It fades pretty quickly when you wash it. I found that out with another piece that she gave me. So it works great for my finishing for my cross stitch stuff, because a dye is not going to bleed unless it gets wet, right? So it's going to be fine, and I'm going to use this behind my piece for that extra layer. Okay, so I'm standing at the cutting table, and I'm going to point the camera down towards the table here in a minute. I just want to talk to you a couple seconds. Couple things I've done before that we joined each other back up is I went ahead and I cut my sticky board. Now I get the 11 by 14 inch boards, and I cut them down to the size that I need. For the Pinker and Pumpkin cross stitch pieces, I cut them at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a 5.5 square and 5 inch square. So the 5 inch square is for my stitch piece, the 5.5 inch square is for my decorative fabric. So those are the 2 pieces that you would need if you're finishing a Pinker and Pumpkin salt box. If you're finishing something else, then obviously cut your squares or rectangles to whatever size you need. We're going to share technique today, so you can apply this to any of your cross stitch pieces that you're finishing. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is swing this camera down and show you how to get a good placement on your stitch piece. All right, so you should be able to see that. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way. I know that's one thing that kind of bugs me when I'm watching videos. I'm like, I can't see through your hands. Pardon my reach. Okay, so I know that my stitch piece, my board is 5 inches. So I'm just going to grab one of my 5 inch rulers and kind of center that piece on there. And I'm really just eyeballing it here. Okay, so I want to use this ruler just to kind of figure out where my stitch piece is and just the sides. And it looks like I have a good almost 1/4 inch around on each side of my design. So what I'm going to do is I'm on the back of my stitch piece. I'm going to lightly mark around my ruler, which is a 5 inch square. And obviously, if you don't have a ruler that's the exact size that you need, then you'll be able to just kind of, line it up and mark this out. The next thing I'm going to do is take that sticky board, and this, oh my goodness, sometimes this is tricky getting that cover off. Do not throw this piece away. We're going to use it in just a moment. Now I can use this, the marked line that I have, and just drop that on there into place. And you always want to turn it around and make sure that it is where you want it. That looks pretty good, huh? Pretty good. All right, so here's where we have to be brave. We got to use a hot glue gun, and we need to not burn our fingers. But I have a couple tricks for you. I put a glob of glue, that's the technical term, by the way, a glob of glue in each corner, and I just pull that over and kind of let it rest on top. Let that cool down just a second before I press onto that. Now, the corners aren't usually my problem. It's usually the sides that are my problem with getting burned. So I'm going to run a line of glue on here. And remember that piece of sticky board cover that I told you not to throw away? I'm going to use that. And I'm going to fold it around and press it down. Now, I have some waxed sticky board remover paper between me and the heat. So no burnt fingers there. And you can do that if your cloth is big enough. If you're dealing with little bitty pieces of cloth, you can still kind of do it. But see how I'm like sliding this under my board? And then I'm just pushing that cloth down. And I'm pulling back a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. Pulling it back to get that good and done. I'm going to go ahead and do the other two sides, and then I will show you the next piece. Okay, so there is our finished cross stitch piece, and to be quite honest, that is super cute just by itself, isn't it? But we're going to add a little more oomph to it by adding another layer behind it. So let's set this to the side, set that up there where it doesn't get hurt, and we will pull off the cover again. Don't throw that away, but I bet you know why now. And I'm really just going to pick the piece of this that I like. I have a few different designs to choose from. Actually, let me do this. This is what I normally do. Lay that down. I really like this corner, so I'm just going to put that there, smush it down, flip that over, kind of smooth that out a little bit, and then grab a pair of scissors. And I mean, if you want to use your rotary cutter and be really precise with this, you can. I know that I'm not going to use this fabric for a quilt project or anything, so I don't really care about straight lines on that. All right. Actually, let me cut this side down a little bit more. That got a little bigger than I wanted. All right. And then again, we're going to do the globs of glue. Fabric's a little smaller, so I got to be a little more careful. No burnt fingers, no burnt fingers. All right, and remember we saved that piece of paper for this very reason. And I'm gonna get the other sides done, and then we'll do the next step. Okay, so I had to pause it because I had not picked out my trim, and that takes, well, it takes a little bit. So here is what I chose. I chose this yellow trim. It's a really pretty crocheted trim that I just had in my stash. And I am going to put that on the back of this piece. But what I'm going to do is I only want a little bit of that to show. So I'm going to turn this over and go, oh, okay, well, I can line it up there. So I can glue this on the back, and I don't have to squish it under the sides. So I'll have this glued down and then glue everything in piece on top of my backboard. So let me do that, and then we'll put it together and finish it up. Okay, so I'm sure you noticed that another reason why we saved these sticky board back covers is because then when you're working with lace or a crocheted trim like this on the back of your board, you can use that to smush it down and you don't have to worry about burning your fingers, which is a really good plus, right? Okay, so final step is assembly. And basically I just take some glue, center it, and then press down. Okay, so then final thing is to add our washers on the back. Now, I am down to 2 washers. I need to go to the store. But I know that I have my washers set on my board at about 4 inches apart. So I'm just going to put these on here. These need to dry really well before you start putting them against the magnets, because the magnets are strong enough that they'll pull them off if they're not really good and dry. So this is just going to lay here for a few minutes, and then I'll show you the finished thing on the board. Okay, so here's our finished design on the board. It's held on there with the washers and the magnets, and it is looking pretty. I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial. I hope it helped you, gave you a few tips or tricks along the way, and I hope you can use it in your next cross-stitch project. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Hit the bell for notifications so you know when I upload a video, and I will see you next time. Happy stitching!